You are back in the Atomic Autosports studio for another episode to learn more about a driver's motorsports journey. And this is actually the second time I'm recording with Jasper Drengler, because the first time I had some technical difficulties. We didn't have Josh in the studio with us, and he's been gracious enough to spend some time with us to re-record his episode. And I've never had a guest pull off the side of the road outside Indianapolis to record with this. So Jasper, it's great to have you, I guess, back on the Late to Grid podcast.
It's nice to be here, and this time I'll try to not screw up the recording for you.
That's all right. It's browser, computer, whatever kind of stuff. So you're sporting the Continental hat. We'll talk about tires and stuff later. You're doing some business trips on your way to Pocono, right?
Yeah, so I stopped in Indianapolis and saw a client this morning. I'm going to stop in Fort Wayne and see another one because, you know, every trip to the racetrack's a business trip, so got to make the most of it.
That's right. So what kind of business are you in?
So I own a couple of companies that build, clean, and service fireplaces throughout the Midwest, and that's what I do for a day-to-day job. I like to get my hands dirty. I do not do good sitting in the office. So I pop in the offices from time to time. I drive everyone nuts. They shoot me out the door as fast as possible, and they give me something to keep me busy. And that's my day-to-day job.
Well, that explains on social media why I see pictures of fireplaces and stonework and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we built some pretty cool stuff. You know, our companies will do anything from just fixing a water heater chimney to, you know, a six-figure fireplace in a fancy hotel and everything in between. So it's fun. I've been in this industry over 20-some years. I've traveled the world working on fireplaces and learning new techniques, and I have absolutely the best staff on the planet, the coolest people. I love the culture that we've built at work. A lot of my guys are into motorsports, which makes it fun. And, you know, every day I walk into work, there's smiles, and I'm happy to see my people. So I still love my job.
That's great. Have you ever, we haven't even gotten to your motorsports journey yet. I love the business side of what people do. We'll get the motorsports in a second. Have you ever done a design of a chimney fireplace that somehow included racing?
I built a barbecue grill in a Harley-Davidson dealership, and I used motorcycle heads, you know, the jugs that sit on top of a V-twin, and I incorporated them into the brickwork as I built it. And then same thing on the facade of the building. We laid up all these antique brick from 1903. You know, 1903 is the year Harley started. And so there's tons of different motorcycle pieces built into the masonry on this grill and on the facade of this Harley dealership that I helped build. That one turned out pretty cool. That
does sound really cool.
And I do have a lot of race car drivers as clients. And, you know, there's lots of cool ideas, but the man caves and the bars get the coolest fireplaces.
Oh, for sure, as they should, right? All right, let's jump in a little bit about your motorsports journey. And I know it's going to take us a lot of different places, but like most of my guests, family got you involved in motorsports, and you attended your first Indianapolis 500. You were only 7 months old. Who won that year? Do you remember?
I couldn't tell you. I used to know off the top of my head. I don't recall anymore. You know, I didn't miss an Indianapolis 500 until I was 18 years old. So I went to, and I've been back a few times since. Ari Leyendyke was always one of my favorite. I loved Eddie Cheever. You know, the year, you know, I saw some crashes. I saw some people get hurt. But I just loved that place. And it was hallowed ground forever. And when I started racing, that was a place that I thought I would never get to race at. And now I consider Indianapolis my second home outside of Wisconsin. The state of Indiana, I think I've raced in the second most of all 50 states. And every single time I drive past the stadium, I get tingly feeling. And every time I drive underneath the bridge into the paddock, you know, you feel home and you get a lump in your throat, and it's like you return to the Holy Land.
It is a very special place, magical. I think a lot of folks would say. Were your parents really big race fans and they just went every year, or was it more about the ceremonial, just something to do?
So my dad was always a race fan. We went to a lot of local dirt and asphalt tracks around Wisconsin. He owned a couple small businesses, and he liked to sponsor cars. So we would go to a track, and I always found it more interesting to go to a local race when you have someone to cheer for and you've got a vested interest in the outcome of the race. And then, of course, a lot of Sundays, NASCAR was on TV. And growing up, Alan Quickie was my hero. He was the one I cheered for the most, being, a Wisconsin guy. And I loved racing. It was something that I could never do as a kid. My parents had a large family, and racing budgets are expensive. And so the first chance I got to get on track in a car, I jumped at it and was hooked immediately.
So what was that first car?
So as a kid, I managed to save up my allowance, or I didn't have an allowance, but I'd collect aluminum cans, and I bought a go-kart, but I didn't have a motor on it. So for years, me and the neighborhood kids would push it up a hill and ride it down the hill. Push it up the hill and ride it down the hill. And that was all I knew. That was all I had ever done. But then the first time I drove on a racetrack was the Slinger Superspeedway in Slinger, Wisconsin, and they had Spectator Illuminator racing. And so I took the car that I rebuilt in my high school shop class, and I went out there and raced it, and I won. And that was probably the worst thing ever, and that set the tone for the rest of my life. I was hooked from there on out. And this disease of motorsports I haven't been able to shake ever since.
What kind of car was that?
It was a 1989 Chevy Beretta GT. It was a V6 with a 5-speed. I bought it from the local car dealership, Erickson's Auto, and there was no front end on it. It was completely demolished. It was one of those cars they were going to ship off to an auction or crush. And my high school shop teacher let us bring our own projects into the shop, and I completely rebuilt this car. And it was fun. I crashed it a couple times. I learned a lot. I wish I still had it, but it's long gone. But it could do great smoky burnouts. I destroyed the clutch in it, so we had to learn how to do that. But it was a lot of fun. So I Spectator eliminated that car for a couple of years all over Wisconsin.
How cool that you had access to do that in high school shop class. That's a really neat opportunity. Did you work in it?
I was really lucky to have that. And my high school shop teacher to this day is still a good friend. I mean, I go to his house regularly. We hang out. I did install the fireplaces in his new home. He has an old IRL Indy car in his garage right now. He's a cool dude. And he is responsible for leading me down the right path when I was a teenager and not always making the best decisions in life. So to this day, we're still friends.
Wow. So that Beretta driving around, I'm going to guess that was an asphalt oval track?
Yeah, Slinger's an asphalt oval, and that was where I first raced it.
All right. What memories do you have? What was like your greatest accomplishment in that Beretta at that track?
So those races were single elimination. So you'd line up two at a time from a standing start, and you'd make one lap for the heat races and 2 laps for the feature. And if you lose, you're done. And being a front wheel drive Chevy Beretta, the checkered flag paint that was down the front stretch of that track was very slippery. So the rear wheel drive cars would spin their tires for 15, 20 feet until they got off the paint. Whereas the front wheel drive car only had to go a foot before it had traction. And so while I wasn't the most powerful car, I had traction soon, and I worked at a tire shop, and I already at that age knew what tires tread wear ratings meant, and I would grab junk tires out of the junk pile that were like 200, 400 tread wear, and I'd put them on this car. And I'd have traction long before the Camaros and Mustangs and Corvettes did. And that was my advantage. And once you got in front of them, passing was very hard to do because I just took up the whole track because I wasn't a good driver. So they were scared to pass me. And more than once there was contact. and then they'd kick you out of the track for 2 weeks for having contact because it was a no contact class. But I loved it, and I won a couple of them, and I couldn't wait to build an actual race car. And so every year at the end of the year, they have what was called the Spectator 200. And it was basically grab a car, knock the windows out of it, don't do anything to prep it, and go race. And that was very feasible at that age. So I had a 1994. Now this is going to make your neon seem really fast. It was a Plymouth Acclaim, iron block, iron head, single cam, automatic, big heavy car. The only reason I raced it is because it was the cheapest thing I could find that ran. And it finished the race. I finished in the money. Right? It was like 5th or 6th place. Transmission was destroyed because those transmissions actually came from Dodge pre-destroyed. So, any driving is going to finish it off. And I was kind of, I was happy I finished in the money, but I knew the car was junk, and that was a little disheartening. And that's when the next biggest mistake of my life happened, when promoter Rex Melia said, we're thinking about racing little cars like this weekly at the dirt track down the road. You build one, I'll help you get to the track. And that was horrible. I ended up upgrading from the Plymouth Acclaim to a Dodge Shadow. And much better. This one was a 5-speed, so this car was a rocket. And after the Dodge Shadow, I took to Slinger Speedway for their very first 4-cylinder front-wheel drive class race, and I won that. So again, hooked, line, sinker. I won a couple of the races on some dirt tracks that year, and then racing got serious.
I remember those cars because I worked at a Chrysler Plymouth Jeep dealership in the early and mid 90s. So I remember those things very much.
The local dealer called the transmission room the job security room for the mechanics. Those transmissions were brittle.
Oh, boy. So how long did you work at the tire shop?
So when I was in high school, I got to go to the tire shop as one of my classes. So I started working in different shops around town, specifically that tire shop, when I was 16. And I worked there full time until I was 19 years old. And the only reason I left was I had a baby coming on the way, and a guy came in and told me I could make more money working on chimneys than changing tires. And I told him chimneys are stupid. No one grows up and wants to work on chimneys. Working on cars is cool. That's what I want to do. And he goes, I hear you got a kid coming and you're getting married. You can make good money doing it. And, he was actually right. So chimneys paid a lot more money. But what that did for me was it saved cars as a passion. So guys like you who can work on cars and be around cars for a living and then do it as a passion, you're very rare. I know so many mechanics that go home and hate cars. And I know that if I were still at the shop wrenching, it wouldn't be the same as it is now. Now I go home and I work on cars as my way to wind down from the day and to relax. And yes, most days I hate cars and cars are stupid too, but I'll call up some buddies and we'll go in the garage and a couple friends, and suddenly it's relaxing and it's fun when stuff isn't, too expensive. But I think having a job that wasn't in the car world saved cars as a hobby and a passion for me.
That's a great point. Too much of something is not necessarily a great thing. And you're right. You do it for a profession. You might not enjoy it and you just want to get away from it in the evenings or weekends. So that's great that you had that invitation to go into that industry, and it's something that you continue to do and provides for your racing and family. Very cool.
Absolutely.
How did you and when did you make the transition from oval racing into road racing?
So the mid-2000s, I had raced at most of the oval tracks in Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, a couple others. And, Road America is right here. And that was like, man, I would love to race there someday. That just sounds fun. And so at the time, I looked into what a CCA license would cost. I'm like, it's how many hundreds of dollars for the license? That was nuts. I was racing at one point 4 or 5 nights a week. The entry fee to get into the track and the car and the registration and everything was $20 tops. Sometimes it was free. and I would leave with a couple $100. So to pay hundreds of dollars and not get paid, and I shoestring budget, that just didn't make any sense. But I did get to race on the Roval at the Milwaukee Mile with the Midwest Enduro Series, which doesn't exist anymore. And I'm like, this is kind of fun. I kind of enjoy this. And so, in the meantime, I started my own business, and I started having a little bit more disposable income. And so I started looking at other series that race at Road America, and Champ Car, which was Chump Car back then, was just starting. And it looked cheap. You know, my buddy's like, hey, their cars are only $500. I'm like, well, that doesn't seem possible, but we'll try it. And so I ended up with a Mustang, and it met the rules, and we went to Road America, and I think we were on like some 600 treadwear tires, and they were skinny, and Chump Car was not as, and it wasn't what it is today. There were a lot of beaters on the track. And very first race at Road America, a field of like 60 some cars, and we finished fifth. And again, had a little success and was hooked, and hook, line, and sinker. So then we decided, we took a year off from the oval stuff, and we built a couple of Mustangs because they matched. Because if we're having fun with one car, why not bring two cars to the track?
Sure.
Because I'm still not very smart at this point. And so we started doing some Champ Car races. We went down to the very first race at NOLA. The track was brand new. It had no amenities. It was just a blacktop ribbon in the swamp. And that was fun. And we went to Brainerd, and we did the Roval at Iowa. And we were in the first national championship race, as they called it back then, and finished like 25th. And I just suddenly loved road racing. And then, we went back and we did some traveling endurance series that did road courses and ovals. And then I decided to go late model outlaw dirt oval racing for a year. And then I thought I wanted to race something a little bit different. And I saw an ad for someone renting out Pirelli World Challenge B-Spec cars. And I'm like, that looks really cool. I would like to just do one professional race once, and found out what the budget was, and I was shocked. But the car owner and I came to an agreement that I could race it at Road America for X amount of dollars, as long as he didn't find someone else to rent the car out for the whole season. And, of course, he found someone to rent the car for the whole season, so I was out of ride. And so I found a car for sale, and, you do a quick budget, you search how much it costs to enter the race, and of course, my math was off by a ton, but I ended up buying a B-Spec car and going Pirelli World Challenge racing for a couple of years. And after traveling with that, then I decided I wanted to try racing in all 50 states. I just loved the traveling. I no longer enjoyed going to the same track every single weekend, racing the same people with the same drama. And nobody likes it when you win all the time, I learned. So we decided just to travel. And so we did that for a few years. I won an SCCA conference championship, and I just started checking off tracks. And May of 2023, I succeeded in racing in all 50 states.
That is phenomenal. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, I bet. Which state was the hardest to get to in racing?
So Rhode Island doesn't have a normal track that runs cars. There is a dirt oval that a guy has on his private property and calls it the Barnyard. I'm going to go race there next year. So when we did Rhode Island, we rented out a go-kart track, and we did that. Alaska was actually super easy. I found a guy online willing to rent me a car. We flew up there, we raced, flew home. That was fun. Hawaii was probably the most difficult, because I started sending emails out to people, and I said, I want to rent a car. And I think I came off as like a Nigerian prince. No one believed me, and I was trying to send them money, and they didn't understand. So a track promoter at Maui Speedway reached out to me, and he said, are you serious? And I said, yes. He goes, well, let me see what you can do. And so I instantly wired him $1,000. And he goes, you are serious? I'm like, yeah, I want to race. So he found me a car, and he kept it at his house, and I flew out there, rented a U-Haul, went to his house, loaded up the car. And the craziest thing happened. You know, when you buy a car from 1,000 some miles away and you're sent pictures of it, it's amazing how it magically isn't the same car when you get there. It's weird how that
Mm-hmm.
happens. Their dents were on it and a bunch of other stuff that weren't in any of the other photos. Um, so I raced it that night. I spent half a day in the Walmart parking lot fixing it and, you know, trying to make it resemble a car. And the roll cage was something that I would never let any of my children get in and drive, because they just do it with what they can on the island.
Mm-hmm.
And
Bamboo.
I raced it. It was rough. It was
Yeah.
rough. Raced it, had a good time, finished third. And at the end of the night, I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this car. So I took it back to the promoter's house. And a few weeks later, a check arrived in my mailbox. He found someone to buy it because I guess the car had never finished any better than last. And suddenly finishing third place, the car was seen in a different light and sold really quick after that.
Look at that. If you have a race car you want to sell, contact Jasper and he'll get it sold for you.
The problem is people trying to sell me cars every single week, and we're on a net zero regiment right now. The goal is to actually make more space in the shed. So I've turned down a lot of really good deals recently, and it kind of hurts.
Yeah. Of all the tracks you drove, folks, 50 states. Did you hear what he said? He's raced in 50 states. That's amazing. Jasper, what's the most memorable track you went to and why?
The Nurburgring. I've never been so intimidated by anything in my life. The first time I went to Bristol, that was pretty cool. The high banks, my car tried killing me. The first time I felt the rumble of the brickyard, crossing the yard of bricks, that was very emotional. I was scared at the Nurburgring. Nurburgring scared the crap out of me, and my instructor said, as soon as you feel comfortable, pull off. You're done for the day. The second you think you're comfortable in this car, you're gonna get hurt. So you're done. And he was right. And the first 2 hours of training, it was nothing but watching crashes and watching other stuff go bad on the track to prep us for it and respect it.
Wow. What kind of car did you do that in?
It was a 2010 BMW sedan of some sort, fully caged race car. Signed my life away, bought the insurance on it, but it was fun. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, I bet. How'd that come about? Just, hey, I'm going to go there and do that? Or were you over there vacationing or business?
There's a lot of guys that rent race cars over there. I was over there for work. I was in Europe for a couple weeks, and right in the middle of the trip, I had some downtime. And so, of course, let's find a racetrack, and that's on everyone's bucket list. So that was a no-brainer.
Wow. Very cool. So you're on the way to Pocono right now. What are you going there to race?
I'm going to race a 2017 Honda Civic Si. I built this car to the rule set for Pirelli World Challenge, now SRO or TC America. And I've never raced it there because it's so ungodly expensive for the amount of track time. I just never made it back to SRO. But Pocono has been on my radar forever. Watching NASCAR as a kid, the Tricky Triangle. And so there's a series out there on the East Coast that has a track day and instructions and wheel-to-wheel racing this weekend. And so I signed up, and they invite anyone with any competition license to come. So I've got a few of those. So we're going to go cross Pocono off my list.
Oh, that's awesome. Do you have a crew meeting you there, some support folks?
Going completely solo on this trip.
Wow. I definitely want to circle back and hear how it was. I'm sure it's going to be a great weekend. You're going to have a lot of fun, probably come home with some hardware. What's the rest of the season look like for you? I do want to talk about Baja later, but the rest of the car racing season, what's that look like for you? Any other big events?
So we are going to do the Champ Car race at Road America in October. I've got an E36. It's a retired IMSA car, and we're going to take that. We race it in the EC class because it's a real race car. and I don't like counting points and being told that I'm cheating. So we just ran the EC class. The car's been pretty reliable. We've got a brand new transmission in it, and we were renting seats out in our cars and tried to make racing a business. But with this new transmission, all I did was invite some buddies and some guys that I like to hang out with, and we're going to go to Road America and test out this car in its new form. And it's either going to break in the first hour or it's going to finish pretty much at the pointy end of the EC class.
Oh man, that's a great opportunity. My listener tends to be someone who is taking the next step in their motorsports journey. So maybe moving from autocross to track days, or maybe moving from track days into racing, and to a certain extent trying to get a little bit better. So what advice would you give somebody that wants to get faster, that wants to get better, wants to get safer on track?
So the two biggest tips I would give anybody is all seat time is good seat time. Don't be ashamed to be driving the Neon, the Cavalier, or the Miata. All seat time is good. And set a budget and stick to it. Because the first thing that will take the fun out of racing is not being able to afford to race. So, you meet guys that go out and they buy a fast sports car and they get frustrated because they're getting beat by something else. There's no shame in starting off with something at 100 horsepower and just getting the car control down and getting as much seat time in as many cheap, slow cars at as many tracks as possible, and learning all of the skills before you get too much horsepower and spend too much money. That's great advice.
The thing is, my first track day was a Mini Cooper on run flat tires. And I remember at the end of the event saying, man, I said to one of the event organizers, I would have had a lot more fun. I probably would have been faster if I wasn't on these run flat tires. He says, no, you should have come on the run flats. The important thing is to get here and just start driving. And then you figure out what you need. So folks, listen to Jasper's advice, set a budget. Your partner or spouse is going to be glad you did that too. And just get out there and do it. Right?
Absolutely.
One of the things I know you've said is kind of the most memorable race or most memorable experience had come when you raced with your sons. Tell us more about that.
So I've got 4 kids. 3 of them have raced, and so far I've gotten to share the track with both of my boys, and that brings me more joy than anything, right? My oldest son, we were down south at some dirt track, and I won the race, and I was shocked when I see him finishing 3rd right behind me. And I'm like, that's incredible. You're in a car that does not have the power I have. And he goes, yeah, I just didn't lift and followed you. And he said, I knew that if your car could take the corner that fast, this car should be able to take the corner that fast. I'm like, that's smarter than 50% of the drivers you meet out here for the first time. And then a few months ago, or last month, I was at a double elimination race with my younger son, and I watched him win a couple rounds, and that was the coolest thing ever. A lot of the local people weren't real happy that I showed up with 2 cars and that my boy beat, my 17-year-old son was beating a bunch of adults in one of my cars, but I loved it. That was the most fun I had at the track all year, was seeing my youngest son, my little baby, go out there and beat adults.
Yeah. What a great opportunity to share, the track with your son, share the podium as well. Do you think they'll be doing the same kind of stuff you're doing, trying to, create bucket lists of all 50 states or this particular track, or, let's go semi-pro? Where do you see this going for them?
So my oldest son, I think it's just something to do with dad once in a while when it's convenient. My younger son, I think, wants to do something in motorsports. He's 17. He's working at a machine shop part-time. He's in the same school to work program I was, and he wants a mechanical job. He wants to work with his hands, and he wants to race. But he very much knows that he needs to have a job, and that dad will help him, but dad's not just going to deliver a car to the track every week. And of all of my kids, he's the one that would show up at the shop during the week and help work on stuff and help me load stuff. And he understands the costs associated with it and doesn't take anything for granted. So he'll end up racing, and he'll probably keep racing a race or two with me when it's convenient. But my oldest daughter just changed her major to mechanical engineering, and she's got some mighty lofty goals of where she wants to end up. I've dragged her to the 24 Hours of Daytona and to Sebring, and I work part-time for a motorsports company, and I've introduced her to a lot of people, and we're going to go to Le Mans this year, and she wants to be at the track in some capacity as an engineer. Not sure exactly what she wants to specialize in, but she wants to use her skills and have a racing job. Not necessarily in a car driving, but she's got a little Beamer and she collects speeding tickets. But I don't, she enjoys like the occasional autocross day or just a lapping day. But I don't think she's got the fierce wheel-to-wheel desire that the boys do.
Yeah, and that's okay, because as one of my previous guests, Sarin Kadapali, said, you have to find your joy in motorsports. And for you, Jasper, that's behind the wheel. For your daughter, it's being at the track, engineering things, making things better, faster. And if we all find that joy, not only will we enjoy life and our career a little bit, but we'll find maybe even a hobby that keeps us happy.
And, and we need fans in the stands. Not everybody's going to be the driver. We need fans in the stands. We need the slow cars on track, the field fillers. We need the mechanics. I've got a buddy who just enjoys going to tracks to work corners. And he's got a goal now of just working at every pro track in the country. And he's checked off most of them so far. And motorsports needs all of those people. We need the guy that loves working on cars and going to the track, but not driving. We need the guys that love coaching. We need all of them for the sport to continue. And, not so much in road racing, but in oval tracks where they need the emission dollars, we need fans in the stands.
Yeah. You mentioned coaching, and it made me think of something I want to talk to you about. So there's no doubt you have some natural ability, because you hopped in the car, that Beretta, and you just started doing really well. But there's probably been times over your racing career where you wanted to get better, you wanted to hone a little bit. Did you seek the advice of coaching, or what resources did you use to make yourself an even better driver?
I never had any training or coaching until after my first year in World Challenge. That's when I realized I couldn't drive. So I went down to Arizona to Bondurant, and I had some coaching, and I started working on some fine details. And, if you don't use it, you lose it, and you have to stay sharp. So I finished the class, and the very next day I went down to Indy Motorsports Park and rented a Porsche for a Lemons race and had a blast. And, I had so many bad habits from all the years of oval racing and on dirt, and I didn't understand why in the road course things would happen. I didn't understand the physics of the car as well, because they're completely different creatures. And once I had someone sit down and point out all the very obvious things I was doing wrong and teach me what trail braking was and teach me how to not destroy my tires in the first 3 laps, I found myself winning some, on the podium a few times in World Challenge. So I'm actually plan to go back and freshen up again, as I think everybody should. And I've never really cared for autocross. It's never been my thing. I just love the wheel-to-wheel stuff. But I live 1 block away from a track that is drifting in autocross almost every single weekend. And I'm going to go there with my kids, mostly to teach them some technique, but also because I think the autocross will help me focus and be more in tune with what the car is actually doing. I've never been one to look at data. I've got a Catalyst. I've had the race keepers. I've had access to it all along, but I've always been a what does the car feel like on my seat kind of driver. And I know that there's a lot of times I'm getting beat by the guy that's just doing more homework than me. And so I need to do that. I need to pay more attention to the data. I need someone in my ear reassuring me that I need to go through the process and focus on it. And, everyone needs something. There's nobody, no matter how talented you are, there's always room for improvement.
Yeah, I mean, think about if we go to ball and stick sports, they all have coaches, even though they could be the top of the game. They got a free throw coach, they got a short game coach, they've got a hitting coach, whatever sport they're in. And it's the same for us. We might not be in IndyCar, NASCAR, Formula One, IMSA, but we can still benefit from whether it's reading, hiring a coach, watching track videos, in-car videos to learn a track. We can all take some steps to make ourselves better.
Absolutely.
So as you want to learn more, and it could be about getting better, it could be about vehicle dynamics, it can be about tires. What are your resources, Jasper, as you want to learn more about our sport?
So it's only been in the last couple of years that I've started listening to a lot of podcasts, and there's some real good information and good advice on some of these podcasts. And some of them are so boring. And, with my attention span deficit and, I can't listen to a tech thing for hours at a time. It'll go in one ear and out the other. I listened to an amazing one about shocks and how they work and the history of them. And it was great, but I couldn't just concentrate on it. So, how you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. And so just little bits. If I pick up a nugget here, go to the track and prove the theory, then I can go grab another one, prove a theory, and work on myself, work on the car. But there are other guys out there that just soak it up like sponges, and they have the attention span to, go redo the aero and go to a wind tunnel and then go rent a track and try 10 different spring rates. And I don't have that attention span. I don't have that much time. So I'm still not the most, I'm not the best driver on the road by far. I still drive too much by the seat of my pants. And I am well aware that a lot of times I'm getting beat by the person that has taken the time to go through those details. And I respect them for it. But, they're able to do that, and they'll beat me every single day until I someday take the time to hone in on the fine details.
Yeah, we talked earlier about the advice you would give to somebody, but what's the best advice somebody gave you for motorsports?
The best advice I did get was actually from a race car driver who just said, go buy a house first and have a budget. And when the budget's gone, you're done for the year. And I never actually listened to that advice, but it at least made you aware. I know guys that will race all summer on a credit card and then work all winter to pay it off. And I haven't been that bad, but, it's really hard when you're at the track and you're like, a set of tires, and I think I could win this weekend. I don't need a set of tires. I've got okay tires in the car, but, and since I haven't been chasing points anywhere, I've just been racing for fun when I want, how I want. I don't go buy that new set of shocks or that extra set of springs. I'm okay just going out and experiencing the track and finishing second. And like anything, it's a money game, and money will get you far. Talent will get you far. The combination of the both is deadly. So,
a couple more questions before we wrap it up, Jasper. So, as a business owner, as someone that's very involved with their kids' lives, traveling, all the motorsports, how do you balance? How do you plan to get it all done?
For a lot of years, I didn't. That was a problem. So this year, for 2024, my goal was just to go to a track once a month. And that was enough. Concentrate on business. I did set a budget. So I'm going to race the Baja 1000 in November. And that is so over the top expensive that it has forced me to tone down a lot of other racing throughout the year. Like this weekend at Pocono, it's a cheap weekend. It's the entry fee. And I've got these Continental tires last so long and I get so many weekends out of them. I don't have a single sticker tire in the trailer this weekend. So, sacrifices like that so that I can afford to go check off the really big bucket list items are just what I have to do.
Yeah, that's a good segue to talk about the Baja 1000. That is your big goal. That's what you want to do. How does one even get ready for, prepare, enter the Baja 1000?
So as a kid, that was always, the Ironman Stewarts and the off-road trucks. There's just something amazing that draws every gearhead to these amazing machines that can fly over ditches and big bumps at 100 plus miles an hour. And one day, a gentleman that I met at a Champ Car race said, "Hey, I run a pit at Baja and I need help. Do you want to go?" Absolutely, I'm in. Wasn't paying, but I didn't care. I wanted to go for the experience. And so for the last 4 years, I've actually gone and worked for BF Goodrich Tire at the Baja 1000. And the first time I went, I'm like, I got to figure out how to do this. And I always knew there was motorcycles, and I always knew there was four-wheelers and the trophy trucks and some funky bugs. But I didn't realize how many crazy classes there are that race there, and how some of them are actually attainable. Not really affordable, but attainable. And so after the first year, I said, someday I'm going to do this race. And a year ago, I finally found a UTV, a Polaris RZR for sale, race ready, and looked like a good deal. So I scooped it up. And so for the last year, we've been putting the wheels in motion and planning for this. And, we're bringing 16 people to Mexico to make this happen. 4 drivers, 4 co-pilots, 3 chase trucks, 2 trailers, enough parts to rebuild the entire machine twice. It's a big deal. All of the hotel rooms, the airfare, it's a big list. And the guys that are coming with me are all pretty much volunteering their time. We've all worked together in the desert. Some of them I know through business. There's going to be like 4 chimney professionals on this trip. Everyone else I know actually, and I've spent time with them in Baja. So they're not rookies. And we just want to finish. I know we're not going to win, and you're not going to see me on ESPN in December, but I just want to add to my collection one of those Baja 1000 finisher medals. That's my goal for this year.
Wow, that is a huge undertaking. But everything you've been doing up until now has gotten you ready for that. Being the logistics of getting to different tracks in different parts of the country, the different parts of the world, learning how to drive and adapt to different conditions and vehicles. So, man, I wish you so much luck with that. How do the listeners follow along that Baja 1000 journey?
So I've got my page, Drengler Racing. There'll be some stuff on there. Our team name for the Baja 1000 is Flying Ghost Race Team. It's the same team name and Facebook page that we used for our Champ Car road racing over the last few years. So there'll be stuff on there. And then it'll probably be a month or so until after the race that I've got a buddy that's going to make a video. We're going to send him all of the photos and videos from the whole race. And he's going to put together one, 30, 40-minute presentation, because no one wants to sit there and watch our in-car camera for 42 hours. So we'll condense it down to maybe 30 minutes, something that's palatable. Otherwise, now with the computer and satellites and everything that they have, you can actually watch the entire Baja 1000 live timing for everybody in the field. The helicopters are in the air during the day, so you can see the live feed, and then there'll be some drones and some other stuff during the night. But the live timing is available on Score's website to anyone to watch and follow along.
Man, that is exciting. We'll be following along for sure. We'll put links in the show notes to not only how to keep tabs on you and the racing, but also the Baja 1000 stuff. Before I get to my last question, is there anything we didn't talk about or any sponsors you want to plug?
So this weekend's obviously a track day tire weekend. I know some people put Snow VIP to get their discount, but if you want to use Drengler VIP, get your 4th tire free. That'd be awesome. I really want to, they've been amazing the last couple of years. Otherwise, we've got Mobil One oil on the road racing cars, Hawk brake pads, and frozen rotors. I'm sorry for constantly outbraking everybody in the braking zone, but you will not beat me into the corner if you're not on frozen rotors and Hawk brake pads. Everyone knows Hawk. The frozen rotors we started using in endurance racing. They're way more expensive than the crap at the parts store, but they last twice as long. You can go through an entire 24-hour endurance race and know your rotors are probably good for a couple more practice sessions actually afterwards. And then, my guys at Chimney Mechanics and the Chimney Guy and Warm Sensation, all my employees, that makes this all really possible.
Yeah, for sure. We'll put, well, let me quickly say, listeners, the companies that Jasper just rattled off, support them. They're supporting the sport. They're making products and offering services that allow us to have the best experience of the track. So whoever that is, make sure you support them. So Jasper, last question. Have you ever been late to grid?
Not in a long time. So when I used to race at a little track called Beaver Dam Speedway, they made the cars line up 2 races in advance. And if you weren't there, you started in the back. And so I've been close a couple times, but I've never been completely late for grid.
And I guess with that, is there a tip you have to keep folks from being late to grid?
Just set up a routine. Have a regular routine at every track. I leave my helmet here. I leave my gloves here. I leave my race receiver here. And have a routine. Use checklists. And you'd be amazing how much better a weekend goes when you're not looking for something. Organization is key. And it'll make the race weekend go so much smoother.
That is great stuff. Well, Jasper, not only I want to say thank you for being on the Late to Grid podcast, but wish you much luck at Pocono and especially in the Baja 1000.
Thank you, sir.